The Arizona heat of 1890 burned the land and erased the world with a terrifying silence. We rode north expecting rustlers, but the atmosphere felt vacant as something massive hunted from the clouds.
Buzzards refused to fly, and the horizon pressed down with a suffocating gravity that made mounts shiver.
By nightfall, we realized we were not tracking a predator, but were being studied by one above.
Dust motes remained suspended in the stagnant air while our Hereford herd huddled beneath sparse mesquite cover below.
Nibs poked sharply through their hides because the drought was not the only thing harvesting our livestock.
My brother Caleb shoved his plate aside and insisted that these carcasses were dropped from the heavens.
I inspected the heifers and found limbs twisted at impossible angles, with rib cages collapsed inward by force.
A neighbor named Boyd rode in covered in trail dust to ask if we were missing cattle.
He claimed his sons heard a giant sail snapping in a gale despite the air being still.
I recalled a rhythmic, heavy thrumming vibration that I felt in my bones more than I heard.
Father selected a team of 4 to ride out and patrol the boundary line before sunrise arrived. The veteran hand Rios stared at the eastern cliffs and warned that the territory felt completely wrong.
We departed while constellations still blazed above, and the clop of iron shoes reverberated against stable walls.
Caleb rode alongside me and whispered about the heavy, slow noise that sounded like a storm heartbeat.
Our livestock did not watch the dirt for forage, but kept checking the blue void above them.
We found a depression stamped deep into the bleached earth that spanned wider than my own reach.
The sand surrounding the mark looked exploded, as if a heavy object had impacted from high above.
Father brushed the dent and stated it was not a hoof or a wagon rim or bear.
I glanced up instinctively, but the sky overhead contained only high, wispy cirrus clouds near the storm.
We decided to stay regardless and stand watch in pairs as the sun vanished behind the storm.
A low vibration arrived from the zenith in slow, ponderous thumps that carried a faint, physical shockwave.
The livestock panicked and shoved against their neighbors, while our horses jerked against their tethers in fear.
A section of the sky turned darker than the rest and wiped out the stars without sound.
A sudden elevation caused dust to explode as the black shadow overhead lurched and ascended with power.
Lightning flared miles away and revealed a colossal wing with ragged feathers rimmed in silver light above.
Morning light revealed that one full-grown steer was absent, with no carcass or blood left behind.
Caleb argued that we could not wait for the harvest and must attempt to terminate this thing.
We rode toward jagged rock spires, where drag marks led into a narrow throat between the stones.
The soil was compressed into a shape too broad to be natural, where it dumped the kill.
Rios whispered of a nursery right before a deep vibration traveled through the stone like a shockwave.
The beast orbited above and hunted in full sun, as we realized we had to disrupt it.
We rode hard into the dust-choked bowl as the cattle surged away in absolute blind terror.
Creature above adjusted its flight with mechanical precision and locked its razor beak on the mass.
The massive downdraft hit us like a falling wall and nearly ripped the hat from my head.
The underside of its wings blocked out the sky like a living ceiling of black armored scales.
Caleb yelled that we could not outrun it because we were static targets against that aerial speed.
The creature slammed into a cow with an impact that blew dust outward in a shock ring. Its legs were trunks of muscle, and the crest of its head stood taller than a man.
Father shouted that this was our window while it was anchored, and he fired his heavy rifle.
The beast emitted a deep, resonant shriek that vibrated the ground and pressed hard into my chest.
It spread its wings, and the span was so immense that the sun vanished for a second.
Father commanded us to spread out to force a choice while we fired our weapons in unison.
The beak snapped shut hinges from his boot as the terrified Frisian horse carried Rios out of range.
The beast took flight with a sheet of dust and gained altitude while circling with deliberate malice.
The monster tipped its nose down, and I saw with horror that it was coming for me.
The sound of wings battered my back until Caleb fired a shot that made the beast swerve. Father signaled us to build a defensive wall as a flank wound dripped a slow, dark trail.
It aimed for the group with wings fully spread to clothesline us as we fired together rapidly.
The bullet struck the shoulder socket, and the beast crashed into the earth with a towering force.
Father walked toward the beast with his rifle high as it let out a weak, guttural croak.
It lunged forward, but Father and Caleb fired simultaneously, and the impact snapped the massive head back. The body hit the dirt in a plow of feathers, and silence finally slammed into the basin.
I walked to the body and saw wings wider than a wagon covered in armor plate feathers. Father decided we could not drag the weight, but we would take feathers and talons to verify.
Rios inspected the beak and found deep combat marks, suggesting something else fought this thing years ago.
We gathered the herd, and the ride back to the ranch was a funeral procession of silence.
Caleb said he would never ride the hills the same way, after seeing how small we are.
Boyd went pale when he touched the talon and whispered that his boys had heard the beast.
Neighbors arrived to stare at the talons and asked if the creature was bigger than it looked. By sunset, the yard went quiet, and Caleb remarked that it felt like the land finally knew.
I wondered what else was waiting in the empty spaces if one monster could live here unnoticed.
The night was peaceful and the sky stretched wide because the creature was finally gone from us.